Hey there, happy Wednesday. We hope you guys are doing well. And so I wanted to take a quick poll here, I guess. So if you're a big Taylor Swift fan, I want you to show us how big of a fan you are in the comments below using only emojis, okay? And if you're not a Taylor Swift fan, I want you to do the same thing. How much you don't like Taylor in the comments using emojis, okay? And let's keep it clean. But if you stop and you think for just a second, Taylor, huge celebrity, tons of success, and so she released a song back in 2017. It was called Endgame, right? And so this song has a couple lines in the chorus I want us to look at for just a quick second, right? And so it says, big reputation, you and me would be a big conversation. And I heard about you, you like the bad ones too. And so looking at this song, there are two people, right, who obviously like one another, are trying to get into a relationship with one another. And the kind of premise here is that there's going to be a lot of gossip that comes out of these two people starting dating or whatever that is. And so in this song, it really talks about these two people with their reputations, right? And in fact, reputations is one of those interesting things because basically it is just simply what other people think about you. That's what a reputation is. And so in looking at reputations, that's what we're going to be talking about today. In fact, Taylor, I think, actually named the album that this song was on called Reputation, right? And so in the series that we're in right now and later, we're talking about wisdom in certain areas of our life that can help benefit us now and later. And so reputation is one of those areas that we should all consider when thinking about wisdom and how those things can apply to our lives. And so if we look, for example, maybe at this song or movies or other forms of media out there, there are tons of things that suggest what type of reputation is best, right? So a lot of movies and songs talk about this idea of a bad reputation, right? And that through having a bad reputation, there's certain benefits. It's cool to have a bad reputation, right? Maybe there's more popularity that comes along with having that bad reputation. In fact, we could probably say that a lot of times people who have bad reputations tend to fall in a more popular category, right? Just being honest here. And so on the other hand of this, those who have good reputations are sometimes seen in light of maybe not as cool. Maybe they're given these names like goody two-shoes, right? I would love to know where that phrase comes from, right? Goody two-shoes. Who was the first guy that got called that? But oftentimes those who aren't seen as who are seen as good often don't have the popularity or the status, so-called, right? So on one hand, we have bad reputation, is cool and popular. Good reputation, not so popular. And it can be really difficult, especially when you aren't the one that's getting to define which area you're at, which category you fall into. You see, a lot of times I think, whether it be mistakes that we've made in the past, whether it be lies that have been told about us, we can either be pushed into that bad reputation category or that good one. And so oftentimes it's really frustrating for us when we don't even get to decide, or we don't really get much say into which category we fall into, when other people decide for us. That can be so frustrating. And so that's why I think it's so important for us to talk about this issue of reputation. Let's look and see what God's Word has to say about this, right? So in this series, we are looking at books like the book of Proverbs. We looked there last week, we're going to be there again this week. And so this book has kind of nuggets of wisdom and truth for us to help us live better lives both now and later. And so we're going to be in Proverbs 22, verses 1. Right? Here's what it says. It says, a good name is more desirable than riches. To be esteemed is better than silver or gold. And so if you stop and you think for just a second, right, there's kind of two phrases or two lines in this verse, right? And they kind of parallel one another. So a good name or to be esteemed, right? Those things are talking about reputation, right? What people think of, right? A good name is reputation. To be esteemed is simply to be well thought of, right? And so when it comes to those things, this verse tells us that a good name or a good reputation is more valuable and more important to us than riches, gold, silver, money, right? And so looking at this verse, reputation is something that we often don't think of very often, right? We might not have thought of that, what our reputation looks like here lately. But actually, reputation is one of those things that you really, it doesn't matter to you until you really need it, until it's really important. And so for us, we often put ourselves into one of those, I guess I often think of a stereotypical bad reputation. Little confession here, one of my favorite movies is the movie Grease. Yes, I like musical Grease. Right. So anyways, John Travolta, the main character in that movie, one of the main characters, has this reputation of being this bad guy, not this tough guy. He wears the leather jackets and he's all about cars and motorcycles and he smokes and drinks and he gets around and he's all of those things that we would typically think of as a stereotypical bad reputation. But you see, the funny thing is that a bad reputation doesn't always mean those things. Really, for some of us in the real world here, a couple of bad decisions can really ultimately find us with a bad reputation. And so when it comes to our reputations, those bad decisions, they label us. And eventually, if we take this idea, and he does this in the movie, I guess, kind of Grease, but if we have this approach like we really don't care, then ultimately we end up losing something. There's obviously going to be something that it costs us if we consider a bad reputation. And here's what I mean by that. What would a bad reputation stop you from doing in your life? Right? What are some of the things that you enjoy doing or you want to do in your life? Now imagine if that bad reputation that you don't care about, how would that prevent you from doing those things? Maybe your dream is to be a doctor one day, or maybe you want to find a great guy or girl to marry and have a family with. Well, how is your reputation now going to impact some of the decisions that will happen down the road? You see, when we look at bad reputations, a lot of times it's kind of like a locked gate. Now you're traveling down a path or down a road, and all of a sudden you come up to this locked gate. Like, that's your bad reputation. And what ends up happening is that prevents you from being able to continue on with your journey. And you end up getting stuck and stopped and stagnant. And then you don't know where to go. You see, a bad reputation, if we're not careful, can close a lot of doors for you. Now, granted, there are going to be doors that open and close based on your abilities, right? But there's also going to be doors that open and close because of your reputation. And you see, that's why it's important for us to consider these things now so that they don't impact us in a negative way later, right? A prime example of this would be in our social media, right? It's a great tool where you're probably watching through social media right now. But if you stop and you think, the things that you post today, right now, the pictures and videos that you're putting on your social media, eventually will have an impact on what employers think of you, what future spouses might even think of you. And so what we do today impacts our future. And so you can look at any celebrity or any sports star, and you will see the same situation pop up, where things that maybe they posted or they talked about as a high school kid or as a college kid is now coming back, and it's affecting them negatively now. And so what we do now has significant impacts on our reputation later. Right? We could say it this way: a good reputation is good for you now and good for you later. And so we end up with this question. So if we know that reputation is important, what can we actually do about that? Right? We talked about how sometimes there are other people who decide those things for us, the things that are kind of out of our control. And right now, you guys may be feeling that, especially in middle school and high school. So there are certain things that aren't in your control, right? Curfews, maybe it's how much time you actually spend on devices, or maybe who you can go out with and do things. Now that we're in quarantine, you are restricted on what you're able to go and do. But there are still some things that you can control, right? And the first thing is this: you can control what you want to be known for, what matters to you. Think about 2 to 3 things that matter to you, that you want to be known for, right? And I don't necessarily mean talents or skills, but just characteristics, right? Maybe you're always late and you don't want to be known for the person who's always the last one there, or who sometimes just flakes out and doesn't show up, right? You have an opportunity to change that now. Right? So what priorities do you have? The second thing is that what are those long-term perspectives that you have, right? So we identify the things that we want to be known for now, and then we think about what are those things in the future that we also should be important to us, right? So if being on time is important to you now, that's going to impact who you are later on down the road, right? When you're a professional working at a job, right? That's going to matter. And so the things that we decide now that are important to us, also think about those long-term perspectives, what's going to matter in the future. And so as we wrap this up, I want to kind of throw this at you here. This book of Proverbs is great. It's full of wisdom and truth for us. But just know that this isn't a book of promises. It's a book of wisdom. Right? This doesn't promise that if you have a good reputation, only good things will happen to you. That only good opportunities will come your way. And it doesn't guarantee that if a person has a bad reputation, that they're not going to get good opportunities. Those things will happen. But what this is a valuable, loving insight for us to have a better life now and later. We'll see you guys later.